My name is Bert. I'm the CEO of a company called Comcert, and we are using the product since the beginning because basically we were Fluke Networks users, and so we were using the product from the first time, from the first moment. Well, we are a company specialized in troubleshooting, but we also have to install systems to allow our customers to monitor the network. And one of our main purposes of this tool is, of course, during troubleshooting missions, but also to verify the network connection for those big appliances. Because if you install a device to monitor the network, you have to be certain that it is correctly connected to the network. And that's when the EtherScope is very, very valuable for us. The most valuable feature for us is the fact it's like a Swiss Army knife. That you have one device, one very portable device that gives us all the tools we need, and that we don't have to switch between 7 or 8 different tools. The AutoTest, so the possibility to create a profile and then see that the network connection is in line with that profile. The Lambert tests to have an idea about the quality of the cable, which is often the case that you have no report on the cable infrastructure itself. So the Lambert test is also very valuable for us, and iPerf and performance testing. So this is already 4 modules of the tool. You see, it all comes in very, very handy. Our main purpose, our main goal is always wired. And it's very, very rare that you need to combine wireless troubleshooting with wireless troubleshooting. That's a whole different game, okay? So we are using the tool as a wired analyzer or as a Wi-Fi analyzer, and that's hardly never during the same project. Yes, of course, that's one of because we have profiles, we know how our devices need to be connected to the network. It's also very handy, for instance, when you want to install an access point or you want to install a device that needs to be connected to multiple VLANs, that you can create an AutoTest profile that allows you to test all those VLANs at once. And you don't have to, if you do that with a laptop, for instance, you're going to have to reconfigure your laptop all the time. And with the AutoTest, that's not necessary. When it's a connectivity issue, it's very, very rapid. But of course, there are plenty network issues like performance issues that AutoTest will not help you. It is just for a connectivity test. So it does very well what it is designed for. Have we used this as a 10 gig full line capability? We do this. If it is a connectivity test, it's not very often. Of course, when it is a performance test, then we do it. But with a connectivity test, most connections on the user plane are still 1 gig. In a data center, you can, of course, have the inability to connect to a 1 gig port, and then it's very, very handy to have that 10 gig port available on the device. The solutions AirMapper and Site Survey we use very often. We basically do all site surveys with EtherScope. We moved away from the previous product we were using, and we are now using EtherScope. And if we do a wireless troubleshooting, it very, very likely has to start with a survey. My impression to the ease of use, it is, yeah, of course, you have a small screen. The small screen is a little bit of a handicap. It would be nice that we could, for instance, connect a larger screen to the device, but it's very, very user-friendly. You're only limited by the size of the screen. That's my only negative aspect to do surveys with this device. I think that's part of the wireless survey. So you can't do a survey without AirMapper, and AirMapper give me all the possibilities to filter on the data, to show certain networks, to focus on an access point. So I don't see any limitations for doing a survey by going through AirMapper. Yes, what you are describing now is basically AirMapper. If you look at the performance test, which is roughly based on a few standard tests, this is giving me all the information I need. So if you call those the key performance indicators, like latency, like jitter, like packet loss, it does that job very, very well. We win valuable time by not having to use a laptop to do the testing, especially with complex connection profiles. We can't work, this was already when we were still using the predecessor of EtherScope. I honestly can say that we can't work without EtherScope. This is the only device that we have multiple EtherScopes, because we have few engineers, but every engineer that has to go on site, if he has to do his job without an EtherScope in his hand, it will take him at least half a day more. Okay, so it's a very valuable tool. I will never go to a site of a customer to install something, to test something without an EtherScope. EtherScope is my basic tool. The ease of use depends on which application you're using. Yeah, the AutoTest can be completely pre-configured at home or in the office and executed by a less skilled professional. So that's a valuable feature. If you go to performance testing, if you go to other advanced tests, I think you need to be skilled. It's a utopia to think that a less skilled person will be able to do performance testing. But a lot of preparation can be done in the office, and that's an advantage. So you can split it up. You can have like the configuration of the test and then the execution of the test. And then you can also focus your skills. Your skilled people will create the test, and your less skilled people will just execute the test. The discovery tool is a beautiful example of that. If you have to do that with like a ping plotter or something like that, or an IP scan tool, it will take you much more time. Discovery is a matter of minutes to complete, and by visualizing that data on Link Live, you have basically all the information you need. Troubleshooting can't be defined as it will take you an hour. You have sometimes simple missions that announce themselves as being simple missions, and you spend multiple days on it. And sometimes it looks very, very complex, and the solution is really within hands after 20 seconds. So reducing that time, I think yes, but it's very, very hard to pinpoint. Yes, for the same reasons. You spend less time at configuring the device. You can set certain configurations aside and recall them. So if you have repetitive work, this tool will be very, very handy. At first, in the first releases, I wasn't very happy about the Wi-Fi function. But I have to say that they listened very, very well, because in the latest release, all my concerns were resolved. So I think there is a little bit concern, not really concern, but of course it is an Android device. So it's a little bit of drop down, left swipe, right swipe. That's not always very, very clear. It's sometimes not very clear which screen you're looking at. Am I looking at the device configuration, and am I looking at the test configuration? But I think that's something that's more coming from the Android operating system than the EtherScope application itself. So in general, I'm pretty happy with the device. It's a light device, it's a portable device. It doesn't heat up, because small devices sometimes they heat up, and so it's not really fun to travel to work with them. So in general, I don't see a lot of negative points. It evolved, of course. It's now on the market for several years, and I think it is now a very mature product. That's a good question because we're also a training institution. So we also train people to troubleshoot with EtherScope, and it's often considered as being a short learning curve, but a steep learning curve. You need to, every tool has the same problems. Not all definitions are standardized. So you need to get used a little bit about the definitions. Yeah, what they mean by access point, what they mean by radio, what they mean by port, stuff like that. But so it is a steep learning curve. You have to invest some time in it. But let's say that after 1 day or even 2 days, you can work with the product to its full extent. That's perfect. I have never had any crashes of the product. I know the engineers working on it, so I know for them it's a very, very high priority to have a stable software, and it is a very stable software. I never had a crash. I don't say that we're using it daily, but at least a few times a week, and I have never seen a crash, not since the start of the product. In our company, 5. They're all network engineers. Basically, we are a very, very small company, and we are multifunctional, but we're all network engineers. We don't have low-skilled personnel. That's not our business. We don't do installation. We're not an integrator. Yeah, we don't need anyone to put an access point on the wall or install a server in a rack. Yeah, so we are there when it becomes complex. There's one person in charge of the maintenance, so he has to be he's responsible for updating the software, keeping all the maintenance contracts valid. So that's basically my role. The product is frequently used, as I said, not on a daily basis, but certainly on a weekly basis, multiple times by all people. And I don't see this increasing in the near future. It's already a very high used product. I would rate technical support as being a 9. No, we are using Fluke Networks since 2005, and we migrated with Fluke Networks via NetScout to NetAlly. We have never used anything else. No, we didn't. We have a very, very profound relationship with all those guys. So we're not like a typical consumer. I have personal relationships with engineering. I visited the engineering site multiple times. So some people I know for more than 20 years. So it's like it would be a very, very strange choice if we show up at a customer site with something else than NetAlly. That's always a very difficult one because basically already between the US and Europe there's a big difference. Something it's considered cheap in the US, but it's considered expensive in Europe because our companies are smaller. And that's something that an American company from time to time forgets. Let me say that I think it is relatively high priced, and it should certainly not get any more expensive. Yeah, I would like it to be like $1,000 less, but I think everyone would say that. Uh, and of course, maintenance. Maintenance is also a recurring cost. We shouldn't forget that. But I think it's reasonably priced. I won't say that it is a cheap product, but it gives you a high value. So it's worth its money, but it should not get way more expensive because then we in our region especially will have the problem that our companies are simply not big enough to invest in such kind of solution. I would give them an advice as follows. They need to give themselves some time to get used to the product, because if you change products, it's always a getting used to situation. Yeah. But once you learned how to benefit from all those different apps, you will never go back to your old applications running on your laptop. I have colleagues, they always say, okay, you invested this amount of money in a tool, and I can download all those tools from the internet for free. Yeah. The only problem is you will end up with a laptop with 11 tools. So please give yourself the time to explore those new tools, and you will see that it's a very, very user-friendly device, and the investment will be way worthwhile. Commercial questions, I don't really like that kind of questions, but anyway, I know you're going to ask those kind of questions. Return on investment. If you make a decision to buy a tool like this, you already made the decision that you can use it to the full extent of what it will cost you. So it is not something that you put aside. It's used every single day. And for a tool that is used every single day, I think automatically the return on investment is very, very high. It would be a big problem if this is a kind of tool that would stay somewhere in a closet and would be used once or twice a month, or maybe a few times a year. So it's return on investment for me, it's a function of the frequency at which a tool is used. And it's used very much, so I'm quite happy with it. I would rate this product as an 8.